All right, so here we go. I'm actually going to skip these guys right now. Do I want to skip them? No, let's do this one.
They're not guys, they're numbers.
Yes, they are numbers, you're right. Maybe they're girls, I don't know. So this one, to solve it, I would subtract 120, right?
Yeah, sure.
That gives me 5x squared equals what? Negative 120, and then what would I do?
Divide 5.
Divide by 5.
You get 20.
X squared equals, what's negative 120 divided by 5?
Negative 24.
Negative 120 divided by 5.
Negative 20.
You got it. Negative 24. And then I would square root both sides.
Yeah.
Remembering what? Plus or minus. And let's see, the square root of negative 24. What do you remember about the square root of negatives?
That's not a square.
It's an imaginary number. So in other words, I know that there's going to be an I, and then I have to do something with the square root of 24, right? How do I simplify the square root of 24, or how do I simplify 24 when it's under?
Squares.
Yeah, let's break it down. Do a little tree. 2 and 12. I circle 2 because it's prime. 12 is 2 and 6.
3 and 2.
And what's the rule? What can come out? If there's 2 of a kind, right? So I can take a 2 out, but that's it, right? So the 2's outside, the I is outside, and the 2 times 3 is left inside, so that's 6. So my answers there would be 2I radical 6 with the plus or minus. Do you remember that stuff?
Of course I do. Somewhat.
Awesome. JK. All right. Let's look at this guy. When would you ever get an answer that looks ridiculous like this?
Whenever you get answers like that.
When you hate yourself?
X equals negative b plus or minus the square
Quadratic
root.
formula.
Quadratic formula. There's a song for it.
When was there a song for that?
There's always been a song.
Never learned a song.
Maybe I'll sing it for you later
When you were in 6th grade.
when we get to a problem that has that. So when you simplify the quadratic formula, you get to something sort of like this, right? I want to show you how I would expect to see an answer. Okay? Now, when you have 2 things on top and 1 thing on bottom, you split it up into negative 10 over negative 4 plus or minus radical 28 over negative 4. So give each of them their own fraction with the denominator. That way we can simplify things further. What is negative 10 over negative 4?
5 over 2.
5 over 2,
Oh, what?
right?
I'm done.
Both positives, right? Okay. Over here, I should probably check and see if I can do a tree for 28. Can I?
Yes, you can. 4 and 7.
And then 2 and 2, what does it do? I get plus or minus, I can take a 2 out. 2 radical 7 over negative 4. And I think I can do one more simplifying, right?
1.
Plus or minus, this becomes 1 over 2. Radical 7 over negative 2. And I could leave my answer like that. Yeah?
Yes.
We okay there? Are you sure you're okay there? What about the next one? Because this also could be a result of the quadratic formula. By the way, if I'm telling you how to simplify things that are the result of the quadratic formula, what do you think is going to come up soon? The quadratic formula.
No way.
Yes way. Okay, so how would I split this one up? This would be
9 over 3.
9 over 3 plus or minus radical negative 27 over 3. Yes?
Yeah.
9 over 3 is just
3.
3. And then let's see, negative 27. Let me draw a tree for 27. I know I'm going to have to take an I out, correct? I'm going to have an I. 3 and 9. 3 and 3. So let's see. 3I radical 3 over 3. What cancels?
3.
Be more specific.
And I. 3I. 3I.
The 3 here can cancel with the 3 there because the rule is you can cancel something outside with something outside, but not something inside a radical with something outside a radical. So let's see. 3 plus or minus I radical 3 is my final answer there.
Slight work.
A little bit of work. Okay. She mentions that the real and imaginary terms are separated because whenever we have an I, do you remember that whole A plus BI form? They have to be written separate like that. And whenever we have a radical, the I goes in front of the radical. Why do you think the I goes in front of the radical?
Because it's imaginary.
Because usually it's A plus BI and the I is the last thing. Why does a radical become the last thing now?
Because you can't have a negative in a radical.
Well, that's where the I comes from, is because you can't have the negative in there. The reason is, if there's an I in the problem with no radical, the I comes last. If there's a radical in the problem, that always has to come last. Because if you write anything after a radical, it becomes suspect whether it's part of the radical or not. Make sense? So because of that, just eliminate the confusion and put it in front. Okay? If there's no radical, put it at the end. That's fine. But when there's a radical, we deal with that. Okay. Can I go on to the next example?
You can.
Awesome. It's like taking off a Band-Aid there. All right. Find all the zeros. So this is like the same instructions that would have been on your homework, right? And the first thing says come up with the list of possible zeros. Do you see that? What do you notice about the leading coefficient? It's 1. Hallelujah. What does that mean?
It's all I. It's all
There's not going to be any fractions on my list, right? So really my list of possible zeros are all going to come from that constant. So 1, 2, 3, and 6. Because putting each one of those over 1 just keeps them the same. There is a graph for me.
Yay.
Let me step back for a minute. How many answers should I expect to get?
3.
3. How many answers do I see in my graph?
2.
I see 2.
1's repeated.
That's the origin.
I see 1, and this right here are my axes, my y-axis and my x-axis. I only see 1, but I'm supposed to get 3. So either 2 are somewhere not in this window, or there's something else going on here. So let's look at this. If this is -5 right here, could I take a guess as to what that might be?
-4.
-3?
Let's try -3, because -4 isn't on my list. So let's try -3. If I try -3, what are my numbers across going to be?
1, 3, 2, 6.
Bring down the 1. 1 times -3 is -3. 0. -3 times 0 is 0. 2. -6. 0. Yay! So one of my 3 answers is -3, if I write my little box here. All right. I took a 3rd degree, and now I'm down to x to the 2nd plus 0x plus 2. Can I snowflake that?
No, you can.
No. So I can't snowflake it. It's a 2nd degree. I can't see any other roots to bring it down. So I'm just going to say set that equal to 0.
Yeah.
Subtract 2. X squared equals -2. When I square root, remembering plus or minus, what do I have?
Root.
I have a negative in there, so I have to take an I out.
Root.
So I have plus or minus I root 2.
It's crazy.
Could I see these 2 roots on my graph if I, like, graphed it on Desmos and zoomed out? Could I see those Intercepts.
No, it's negative.
Imaginary ones are not intercepts that we would see because this is what we call a real plane. I can't see imaginary numbers on a real plane. Sounds like the beginning of a sci-fi movie.
In a world.
Okay, let's look at this guy. Find all the zeros. Again, we were nice to you. Why were we nice to you? Because your possibility list is just going to be the constant. Why? Because that leading coefficient is 1. Putting it all over 1 doesn't change anything. You're welcome. So let's see. Plus or minus 1, 2, 7, 14. Still 8 numbers. And holy moly, this is hard to read. Okay, this is 5. And there's my origin. Now I notice I can see 2 of the roots, or 2 of the zeros. And one of them is bouncing off the x-axis, which means it's what? Multiplicity of 2. So let me show you how you do that. Let's guess what that number is. I'm guessing it's either -1 or -2. Would you agree with that?
Sure.
Let's try -1. Am I missing any? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nope, not missing any terms. So 1, -4, 4, 10, -13, -14. 1 times -1 is -1. -4 plus -1 is -5. That's going to give me +5, 9, -9, 1, -1, -14, 14, 0. It is -1, isn't it? So how many answers am I looking for at the end? 5. I just found -1 works. Now, yes, I said it has a multiplicity of 2, right? Which means that this was x to the 5th. Now I'm at x to the 4th, right? If I use -1 again with these coefficients, I'm going to still get a remainder of 0. And it'll not be an x to the 4th, it'll be an x to the 3rd. That's what a double root's going to look like. So let's do it again. -6, 6, 9 and 6 are 15. Yeah? That's -15, -14, 14, 0. It works again. So I'm going to say -1 with a multiplicity of 2 because it took me from a 5th degree to a 4th degree and from a 4th degree now down to a 3rd degree. Yes? If it was a triple root, meaning it crossed through and had that little wiggle with it, then it would take me down to a 2nd degree also. And it would be a multiplicity of 3. But I think I'm done with that guy. So I think I need to look here. What should I guess for this one?
2?
I'm going to guess 2. Because it's not quite halfway, but it looks a little further than 1 would be. So let's try 2. And I'm going to use my 3rd degree coefficient so that I can bring it down to a 2nd degree. You follow? Good answer. All right. 1, 2, -4, -8, 7, 14, 0. Boom. So there's -1 with a multiplicity of 2. 2 is also one of my zeros because it works. And now I'm down to an x squared. So let's see where I'm at. I have x squared minus 4x plus 7 technically equals 0. And I have to find my 2 last roots from there because I have 3 listed already. Now, let's look at a snowflake. If I were to try and snowflake this, 1 times 7 is 7 and -4. What are 2 numbers that multiply to get 7 and add to get -4? The only 2 numbers that'll multiply to get 7 are 1 and 7, right? Will they ever add to get -4? No, so I can't snowflake. This is where this problem differs from what you did last night. if I can't snowflake, how do I get my answers out of there? X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a.
That is like the most.
I've never heard that.
What? My teacher. I actually love the quadratic formula, but like I hate it. Because I love it.
Let me write it a little darker for you.
End is
I would love to hear Mr. Matt feel safe. I would.
Yes.
I would feel safe.
B squared minus 4ac
Did she not for your class?
Oh,
What was she
yeah.
saying
all
for our
over
class?
2am. Okay, so let's do that here. What is A? 1, right? What is B?
-4.
Thank you. And C is 7, and I'm plugging that into here. So -4 plus or minus the square root of -4 squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. And I'm going to simplify that. All right. You ready for me to start simplifying?
Yeah.
What is -4? 4. Square root of -4 squared. I like actually just putting everything under the radical in my calculator at once. So make sure that whatever you're squaring is in parentheses. So I put -4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 7. See how I just put everything under the radical in there?
Yeah.
And that gives me -12. All over 2 times 1 is 2. At this point, I have something to simplify like this. Do you see that? So, let's see. That would become 4 over 2 plus or minus I rad something, right? Over 2, I got to figure out this -12 thing. Let me use the back of this guy. So the square root of -12, that would be 2 and 6, 2 and 3. So not only do I take out an I also take out a 2, and what's left inside? 3. Almost done. 4 over 2 is 2. The 2's cancel there, and I have I radical 3. So my other two roots are 2 plus or minus I radical 3. Why is that 2 roots? Because one of them is 2 plus I radical 3. The other one is 2 minus I radical 3. When we have these i's, they always come in pairs like that. They always have a plus or minus with them. Kind of makes sense? So what's the difference from last night? You can't snowflake, so you quadratic formula it. Okay? All right, turn the page. Okay. I'm just going to keep this down here for future reference when I need it. All right. My leading coefficient is no longer 1. Darn it. All right, so my constant, that would be 1, 2, and 4. My leading coefficient, 1 and 2. Yes? So if I put each of these over 1, 1 over 1, 2 over 1, excuse me, and 4 over 1 gives me those. 1 over 2, 2 over 2 reduces to 1, which I already have, and 4 over 2 reduces to 2, which I already have. So this is my possibilities list. There's a graph.
Yeah.
Hooray! A little bit hard to read, but what can you do? So I see 2 zeros there. They're both just crossing through because this wiggle is below the x-axis, so I can't count that as a triple root, unfortunately. Now I got to guess what I'm looking at here. Which one do you want to guess? This one, the one on the left, or the one on the right? Left, what do you think it is?
What's that number?
This number is -5.
What's that number on the right?
There is no number on the right.
What's that long line?
This one?
Yeah.
That's my y-axis.
Oh, makes sense. Very good.
So I'm going to guess -4, and let's see where that takes us. So if I have -4, let's see, am I missing any? 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Not missing any. So 2, 9, 5, 3, -4. -4 times 2 is -8. 1, -4, 1, -4. -1, 4, 0. Yay! By the way, how many answers am I looking for?
4.
4 answers. My first answer is
4.
-4. And now I'm down to what degree? Third degree. I don't think I'd be able to use grouping because I have a 2 and a 1 and a 1 and a 1. So I think I have to do another one. What do you think this one is? Do you think that's 1 or 1/2?
Probably 1/2.
You think 1/2? Let's try 1/2. And what numbers am I going to write across?
2, 1, 1.
The third degree one, so I can bring it down to a second. 2, 1, 1, -1. So 2 times 1/2 is 1. 1 and 1 are 2. 2 times 1/2 is 1. 1 and 1 are 2. 2 times 1/2 is 1. -1 and 1 are 0. It was 1/2. So there's 2 of my 4 answers. What do I have now? I have 2x squared plus 2x plus 2
Snowflake.
equals 0 technically. Before I snowflake, can I take something out?
Oh, you didn't take out 2.
I can take out a 2, and I have x squared plus x plus what? 1. Is there going to be an answer with this 2? No, because there's no letter with it, there's no answer with it. Right? So, can I snowflake this guy?
Mm-hmm.
2 numbers that multiply to get 1 and add to get 1.
1. No.
The only way you can multiply to get 1 is 1 and 1, and that's going to add to 2, right? Or -2 if you make negative. So, if I can't snowflake, what do I do?
Quadratic.
X equals -b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so let's see. What am I going to use for a? A is 1, b is 1, c is 1. We got all 1s here. So, -1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times 1 times 1 all over 2 times 1. -1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times 1 times 1 is -3. All over 2 times 1. That gives me, let's see, let's break it up. Why did I do 2 times 1? Why didn't I just multiply it? It's just 2, right? So -1 over 2 plus or minus something over 2. How do I simplify this? I can't draw a tree for it, right? But I do have to take an I out. Sounds painful. Take an I out.
Wait, it's plus minus?
Mm-hmm. So, there's 1 root, there's 2 roots. The last one is -1/2 plus or minus I radical 3 over 2.
That's 4. Right?
Yep, and that's how many I needed, was 4. So again, that's 2 roots, right? It's -1/2 plus I radical 3 over 2 and -1/2 minus I radical 3 over 2. Yeah? Should I turn you loose to try the last one on your own?
No. Yes. Let us.
No, please don't do that to us. How could you? Okay. Fine. I won't turn you loose. But I am going to turn you loose to come up with your list of possible zeros. Can you at least do that for me?
No.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 12.
And your leading coefficient is not 1, so this list is going to be a bit longer.
1, 2, 5, 1, 2, 5, 10.
This is going to be irritating, isn't it?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, honestly.
Holy moly, this is going to be a bit.
Just skip it.
1,
All votes.
2, 3, 4, 6, 12. That's all of them over 1. Now I'm going to do them over 2. 1/2. 2 halves becomes 1, which is on my list. 3 halves. 4 halves is on my list, right? That's 2. 6 halves is on my list. That's 3. And 12 halves is 6. That's on my list. So I'm done with 2. 5. Nothing's going to reduce, is it?
No, God.
So 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, 6/5, 12/5. I know. And then tenths. 1/10. 2/10 is 1/5, which is on my list. 3/10. Please tell me that's the last one. 4/10 is 2/5, which is on my list. 6/10 is 3/5, and 12/10 is 6/5. All right, that's the end of my list. How many numbers are there?
A lot.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 16 times 2 is 32 numbers on that list. Whew! Thank goodness for a graph, right? If we could only read it, it looks like -1 and +1. Do you see that? Does it look like -1 and +1? I'm going to go to Desmos. Okay? So, I'm going to go to Desmos here. I'll go back to it. Hang on. Okay, so here's Desmos. Start graphing. Let's graph this guy. 10x to the 4th minus 11x to the 3rd minus 42x to the 2nd plus 7x plus 12. Okay. So, 0.6. Do you see that? It says 0.6. What's 0.6 as a fraction? Which one of these fractions is 0.6? 6/10 or 3/5, right? So that's where I'm going to start. So 3/5 is the first one I'm going to try. All right. So 3/5, let's see, 10, -11, -42, not missing any terms so far, 7, and 12. All right, bring down the 10. 10 times 3/5 is 6. -11 and 6 is -5. -5 times 3/5 is -3. -42 and -3 is -45. -45 times 3/5, -27. And 7 is -20. -20 times 3/5, -12. Okay, so there's my proof that positive 3/5 is one of my 4 answers. Yeah? Should we go back to Desmos and look for another one? Because I'm only down to an x to the 3rd. Now let me think about this for a minute. If I have 10x to the 3rd minus 5x to the 2nd minus 45x minus 20, I don't think I could use grouping. Because if I took out 5x squared here, I'd have 2x minus 1. And if I took out 5x, I'd have like 9x and something. They wouldn't match. So I got to go another degree down. So let's go back to Desmos. That was 0.6. That's 2.562. I have no idea what that is off the top of my head. Negative 0.5. I can do that. Negative 0.5 is negative 1/2. So let's use that as our other one. So negative 1/2. And what numbers am I going to put across? The x to the 4th or the x to the 3rd? X to the 3rd. So 10, negative 5, negative 45, and negative 20. Bring down a 10. 10 times negative 1/2 is
2.
negative 5.
Oh, never mind. Forget that.
It gives me negative 10. Negative 10 times negative 1/2 is 5. That gives me negative 40. I have 20. So I do have another one. My second of 4 answers is negative 1/2. And I'm down to x squared, right? So I have 10x squared minus 10x minus 40. And I want to know, where does it equal 0? What can I do to make my snowflake a little easier? Take out a 10. Right? And there's not going to be an answer with that 10, right? Because there's no x with it. Can I snowflake this? You haven't figured it out by now? I'm not going to be able to snowflake this. Right? 4 and 1 or 2 and 2. Neither of them would get me negative 1. So, last time, everybody with me? X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That was lovely for 8:45 in the morning. Okay, so a is what? 1. B is negative 1. And c is negative 4. So, negative b looks like that, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. By the way, just to throw this out there so it's on the recording for posterity, on the test, you're not going to have a 25-question test when the problems take this long, are you?
Yes.
So you have to understand that each problem is going to have several points with it. I mean, this could be a 10-point question. So if you skip it, that's going to be really detrimental, okay? Because there's going to be points awarded for all the different parts of it, and it wouldn't be fair for me to make you do all this work and just give you 2 points for it, right? That doesn't make sense. Another thing, just to make sure that it's on the recording for everyone to hear, if you're coming up with your list of possibilities, this drives me nuts. And you do that, you have not given me the whole list. Right? You've given me positive and negative 1, and then positive 2, positive 3, positive 6, and positive 12. So you do need to fight the laziness and actually list all of those plus and minuses. Okay? Just want to make sure we're clear about that. All right, back to our quadratic formula. Negative negative 1 becomes positive 1. Let's see what we've got here. Negative 1 squared. Again, whenever you're plugging something in, plug it in parentheses. Minus 4 times 1 times negative 4. Not negative 14. How about negative 4? There we go. And I get 17
Yeah. I got 2.
over 2. I like that. Why do I like that?
Oh, because you can
1/2 plus or minus radical 17. No i's to worry about. And nothing can simplify. It's done. So I had 2 answers there. 3/5 and negative 1/2. And my other 2 are 1/2 plus or minus rad 17 over 2. There's my 4 answers.
Why did they take us this way of simplifying the quadratic formula last year?
They may have. Sometimes it's just a personal preference. I like seeing it in the 2 fractions so that I can see what all reduces. All right, so pretty much it's the same thing, more practice on the same thing. The only difference is You're going to come across times where you cannot factor in that last step. You have to use the quadratic formula. Okay? Happy studying.